So, in Luke 9, we've said this many times now, but I want to continue to remind us as Luke breaks away from Matthew and Mark's sort of narrative. What we believe is Mark was probably written first. It was written most likely through the eyes and the experiences of Peter, dictated to John Mark. John Mark then writes that down for us, for the Roman church. And so when you read Mark, what you see Peter's personality, and you should see that, and you should see, and then this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened. All right, you don't find these long speeches of Jesus, because how many speeches could Peter really memorize? All right, you with me? So you have, it's very action-oriented. And you see a couple little hints of Peter in there, okay? Matthew, we believe, picked up later on. Matthew focuses more on these long narratives of Jesus, or these long dialogues of Jesus. So look for that. Also you can see the Jewish factor in that. You see a lot of Hebrew references. You see a lot of Old Testament references there. Luke is later on. Luke is going to pick up, and really, I think Luke goes back and investigates. You see this in the very beginning of the text. You see him saying, I went and I interviewed eyewitnesses so I could give you, Theophilus, we're not sure who this person was, this Theophilus guy, give you an orderly account of what transpired. And so we have this pretty good narrative up until 951, and then all of a sudden from 951 through about chapter 18, it's completely different than Matthew and Mark, all right? But it's, in fancy terms, seminary terms, called the interpolation or intersection of Luke. And so this is what we have, but it starts off with this amazing sort of visual. When the days were coming to a close for him to be taken up, all right? So this is in the last days of Christ, all right? We'd probably say this is probably from the Feast of Tabernacles, or the Sukkot, which would be in the fall, and all the way up through Passover, which would be the spring. So we got about a 6-month little window here. This is when the days were coming for a close, for him to be taken up. He determined, and this is what we said over and over, he set his face strongly. Prosopon, sterizo, all right? Prosopon is your face. Sterizo is his strength to it. We get our word steroid from this, okay? He's resolute. He is going. And there was something in one of the eyewitnesses that said, you should have seen his face. His face changed. There was a resoluteness. There was a determination that he was going to the cross. And that's such a beautiful thing. Why? Because he went to that cross for us. He went to that cross to die in our place. And so when we see these things, we want to follow this. Because when you go through the stories here and the parables here, Jesus just isn't playing around anymore. Jesus is not sort of being passive in any way, shape, or form. Every story, every parable is just in your face. Every time he interacts, and when you see a parable, always look at the audience. Who's he talking to? How is he talking to them? Is he sort of passive with them? Or is he very direct? No, he's on his way to the cross. He's got a limited amount of time, and so he wants to get the point across to them. All right? So we've been through a lot. Come over here to 16. We'll pick up in 16 today. I'm not trusting my little stand. Somebody broke my stand, so it's not going to cooperate with me very well. In chapter 16, and when we talk about parables, what's the first thing you want to ask? Who's he talking to? Okay? Again, 15 is probably one of the best examples of this, and we did this last week where I separated you guys out, and sorry I lost your exit row, Dylan. So you can just move that chair. Just turn it around if you need to. Just move it. Ain't nobody sitting in front of you, all right? Just push that thing up, all right? Get comfortable. But in 15, he starts off with what? The congregation is who? Who are the people coming to hear him? All. I love that part. It's not just some. All of the tax collectors and sinners were coming near, drawing near to him so they could hear him speak. Wouldn't it be awesome if we had a church full of tax collectors and sinners every Sunday? Wouldn't it be? I'm so tired of talking to you nice, pretty church folks. I'm just tired of it, all right? I need some tax collectors and sinners in the building, okay? I know you have those in your life, all right? Hey, here's the beautiful thing. If you'll invite them, research says about 90% will come with you, all right? So next week I expect lots of tax collectors and sinners. I used to joke with my dad. My dad left the ministry and became a tax collector in Florida. So I used to tease him mercilessly about what his job was, all right? But here, that's when you can see it. Now, who's the audience here? Who's the audience here in 16? The disciples. Good. All right. Good. Y'all are actually talking. I'm starting to like this. And here's, going to Haven Home. I do their Thursday morning Bible study every fourth Thursday at Haven Homes. And I thought, first time I went, it's 6 a.m., by the way, all right, which is early. There's generally only 1-6 in my day, okay? But on the fourth Thursday, I get to go hang out with them. And I'm thinking, well, this is going to be a struggle first time I walk in there. And I get in there, and they're kind of strolling in, and I pull out my Bible and everything, and I get about 2 minutes in, and one guy's like, I got a question. What do you mean by this? What does it mean by this? And then the guy goes, it means this. No, it doesn't mean this. It means, and I'm just sitting there going, I found my church. The mothership has brought me home. So I always say, I encourage you, ask me questions, all right? I don't understand. Wait, slow down. What was that word? Do that, okay? And we'll get along real well, okay? But again, who is the audience? He said to his disciples, who are these guys? Now, we got to be real careful because a lot of times we kind of default to what? We say the disciples are who? The 12, right? No. Okay, don't go there. We have the 12 apostles, okay, who are not apostles yet, okay? They have been sent out once. They will be sent out after the ascension of Christ. That's where we refer to them as apostles. That's a Greek word, apostello. The Latin word is missionary, okay? Same word. It's one who is sent out on a mission, okay? Or one who is sent out away from the crowd. Apostello, to be sent away, okay? So disciple is simply what? It's a Greek word, mathetes, okay? We get a word mathematics from it, all right? It's a student, a learner. It's someone who wants to learn, someone who wants to be a part of something, all right? And I always make the difference, and I think it's crucial. We can disciple people, meaning we teach them, or we can make disciples of people. Now, those of you that have taught for a living, you know that's a very different thing. Anyone can just teach at somebody. What does it take to turn that student into a learner, to make them where they're going, teach me something new? Teach me something more. We had one of our interpreters in Ukraine, when we would go to Ukraine. As soon as I got off the plane one day, this Vanya came to me, and he had his Bible in his hand, and he goes, teach me something. Teach me something new. You got to teach me something new this week. I was like, that's a disciple. There it is right there. So when we see this word, understand this. It's not just the 12, okay? It could be more than this, all right? It could very easily be more than this. But it's the people who are following Jesus and learning from him. We learned in our 242 group that when Judas kills himself, they know they need to replace him. And they replace him with who? Matthias. And what was the qualifications? Matthias had been with Jesus since his baptism. All right, that's like day one on the job. And he's been with them for 3 years. Okay? So that's when we say a disciple. That's who we're referring to. All right? So he said to the disciples, all right? And he's going to also have a secondary audience. Look in verse 14. Who else is listening in on this little conversation? Pharisees, okay? So again, we get that same dynamic. The Pharisees are sitting there. Now, are they wanting to learn? What are the Pharisees doing when they listen in on Jesus? Yeah, they're waiting to see if he'll say something to trip him up or trap him in what he says. Okay? It's like that guy right out of seminary sitting in a church for the first time. Dangerous kid right there, all right? You don't want to be that guy because you're so critical of everything, okay? So he also said to his disciples, and I'll tell you this, and I'll give you this warning. If you polled 100 pastors and said, what's the very last passage in all of the Bible that you would want to teach, 105 of them would say this passage right here, okay? I'm just telling you, this is a hard passage. The one thing I see in the commentaries is no one's really sure exactly what this means, all right? It's just a hard passage because Jesus throws something out here and it's like, wait a second, what do we do with that? Because most passages, most parables are very similar to fables, all right? There's a moral to them. You see the moral, you identify with the characters, and you go, oh, now I know what I should do, okay? This one, you read it and you go, I have no idea what the moral is. I have no idea what the application is. And why is Jesus telling me to cheat people? All right? So we got to dig below the surface. So y'all stay with me here today. All right. So here's the parable. There was a rich man, okay? So get all your characters together. Rich man, plusios, all right? When we say rich man, this is a rich man that is so rich that he doesn't even deal with the day-to-day stuff. Somebody worries for him. He literally pays somebody to worry for him, okay? He just lives, all right? A rich man, and he received an accusation, a diabolo, all right? This is where we get the word devil from, a diabolos, the one who accuses, all right? He received an accusation that his manager, which is the Greek word oikonomos, all right? Oiko means house, nomos means rule. So he's the one who rules the house, all right? And he's in charge of it, was squandering his possessions. Now that word should sound familiar because it was used in 15 when we describe what the prodigal son was doing. And the prodigal left home, went to a distant country, and did what? Squandered. This is the word diascorpizo, which means to just throw seed everywhere, all right? So imagine the prodigal going to the distant country, and he's in the bar, and he's buying drinks for everybody and other things that he's just spending all of his wealth on, okay? This is this idea of the scattering, squandering his possessions. So he called, the rich man calls or summons the manager in and asks, what is this I hear about you? Give an account, a logos, all right? Give an account, a word of your management, because you can no longer be my manager, or you can no longer manage my accounts. I'm firing you, all right? And he says, bring the accounting records, bring the records in, because we're going to settle this. We're going to figure out what's going on here, all right? Now, this is where the rich man makes a mistake, okay? Because he says, you can no longer be my accountant. You can no longer be my manager. And here's the thing, though. He doesn't immediately take away all of the man's authority. There's a window of opportunity, okay? And so this manager, who's been just squandering his master's wealth, has a moment, an opportunity. And he has a problem-solving situation, okay? Stick with me, okay? Verse 3, then the manager said to himself, that should sound familiar as well. What does the prodigal do? When he's in the pig pen going, that carob stuff looks good, that pig food looks good, he has a moment where he does what? He comes to himself. Literally, it's what the wording is. He came to his senses, all right? This guy comes to his senses, comes to himself. Exact same wording from the prodigal just a chapter earlier. And he asks the question, what should I do? Again, problem solving, all right? What should I do? Since my master is removing, all right, the management away from me, I'm in trouble, all right? Now, what could this mean? What could this mean when you get fired from your job? Anybody been there besides me? All right? I got fired when Ashley was 6 months pregnant with Holland, all right? From a Christian school job. How do you get fired from a Christian school job, all right? Trust me, I know. I know. I'm good at it too, all right? So that's a problem. I really didn't want to go home that day, all right? Because I knew I was going to be in trouble because literally Ashley was 6 months pregnant, which is a wonderful thing for a Christian school to do, right? Fire an employee at that point. So I didn't want to come home. So how is this guy feeling? What's the emotion? And here's what I want you to do today. I want you to put yourselves in the shoes of this manager, all right? Because to be able to understand and to relate this parable, you've got to understand what he's going through. You've got to understand the motivations and the ambitions and all the factors that play into this. So how is he feeling when the manager sends word saying, hey, come see me in my office and bring your accounting books with you because you can't work for me anymore. I'm going to fire you. Bring your books with you, all right? So what's his feeling? How is he feeling? Is this a good thing? Is he going, wow, good, I can move on to my next job? No, because what happens when you get fired? What you going to eat? All right? And don't you see the desperation that's going to come into play? So his question is, what shall I do since my master is taking the management away from me? And he starts to run through his options, okay? This is what we do, right? We start thinking, okay, I'll get my resume out. I can do this, I can do this, I can do this. The first one he comes to is this, I'm not strong enough to dig, all right? Literally, it's the word eskuo, which means to have the strength. I don't have the strength to go out and do what? Manual labor, all right? So if I lose this job and my only option is go dig ditches or dig whatevers, what's gonna happen to me? I'm gonna either get fired again because I'm really that bad at it, or I'm going to die out in the heat because I don't have the strength to do this, okay? Well, I don't have the ability to do this. So he's going, okay, in problem solving, let's run down this option. I could dig. No, I can't because look at me. I'm weak. I'm frail. I'm old. Whatever it was, the factor was, I don't have the physical strength, the eskuo, to do this, all right? So what do you do when you're doing problem solving and you run down that road? That's not an option, all right? Second option is what? I am ashamed to what? What's in your text? Beg. Anybody else like that? Anybody else want to head down to Richmond Road? All right? Join the crowd at Richmond Road with the sign and everything? All right? No. Why not? Why wouldn't you do that? Because people would actually see you, right? And how would you feel, you vain, horrible people? How would you feel? No, seriously. I'm not kidding. I'm going to die if you guys don't give me alms and give me things. How many of you would rather die than to be out there on Richmond Road with the sign saying, I'm going to die? Yeah, I think a lot of us would. Why? Because it's embarrassing. And that's his thing too. I'm too ashamed to beg. Does he have the ability to beg? Yeah. Does he go, I got fired from my job because I'm such a horrible manager. Will you give me money? That's a bad sign. That's way too much of a sign. That's too big of a sign to have, all right? Your whole resume and explaining what happened to you, all right? But isn't that a dilemma? How does it feel to be too ashamed to do something? And again, I want to suck you into the emotion of this guy. I want you to feel what this guy's feeling. I know I don't have this strength, and I will die if this is my recourse. My other recourse is to beg. But I'm too ashamed to do that. That's got to be crippling in and of itself, just to know I would rather die than embarrass myself. That your pride would literally cause you to die. And that's got to be a horrible feeling to think, I am this arrogant. I am this horrible, all right? So he continues to run down, crosses that off the list. Okay, I'm just that bad of a person. I'll just own that. He says, verse 4, I know what I'll do, so that when I'm removed, all right, when I'm taken out of this place of management, and people, or they, will welcome me into their homes. Now that's the problem, right? If you get fired, he's like, I can't dig and get paid because I just don't have the strength. I'm too prideful to go out and beg, which would provide for my needs. All right, I'm not gonna do that. He goes, I got a plan. I've got a plan. As I'm thinking through it, I know what I'm gonna do so that people will welcome me. You may have a different word for welcome there. Receive. Okay, really bad word there. Don't go received, okay? Remember a couple weeks, well, I guess it was last week, we talked about the lambano versus decomai. Lambano is when the Domino's guy shows up at your house, ding dong, here's your pizza. Thank you, you receive it. That's lambano, okay? Decomai is when grandma shows up. Ding dong, grandma! All right, big hug, welcome, come in the house. You know, you're not inviting Domino's guy into the house unless you have a really weird family dynamic and you're like, I like the pizza guy more than I like grandma, okay? I don't think we're inviting inviting Domino's guy into the house. Come, have a seat, take a load off, spend some time. If you need to spend the night, you can spend the night. Domino's guy's like, get me out of here, all right? I walked into that house, all right? But this is the idea of dechomai. This is to be warmly received. Not like that house guest that just won't go away. This is, we want you to stay here. How in the world is this unrighteous manager who has squandered his master's possessions going to convince people to invite him into his house and provide for him and take care of all of his needs, food, housing, clothing, shower, all this stuff? How is he going to do that? But he's got a plan, okay? Keep going. So he summoned each of his master's debtors, okay? So his master, what do we know about his master? He is what? He's wealthy. He's got rich. He's got money, all right? Is he sitting there going, if they don't pay me today, I don't know how I'm going to provide for myself? No. Can you imagine being that wealthy? Okay, everybody with me? All right? Some of us wait for our paycheck every month going, come on, paycheck. Yes, it beat the end of the month, all right? I get to pay all my bills this month, all right? This guy's not like this, all right? This guy's not waiting on anything. He's just, I got plenty, okay? So, and Jesus really picks up on this. He summons each of his master's debtors, and he says, how much do you owe my master? He asked the first one. 100 measures of olive oil. 100, literally it's the word baths. We get a word bath from this word, okay? So our bathtub is how big, all right? Think about this, full of olive oil, okay? Which don't fill it with olive oil because that's kind of creepy, all right? 8 to 9 gallons is how much a bath is, okay? Now, how much does he owe? 100 baths. What are we talking about here? Almost 1,000 gallons of olive oil. That's how much he owes him. Now, anybody ever made olive oil before? I mean, you pick an olive, you squeeze it. How much comes out? Are you with me here? And here's what Jesus is doing. Jesus is picking up on the audience, and he's making this wildly exaggerated claim here. And he does this, right? He does this on several occasions. A man owes 10,000 talents. He goes, what? That's like the national debt of Brazil. I mean, it's just an enormous, crazy picture. And he's doing this here. So this first guy owes almost 1,000 gallons of olive oil. And everybody in the audience is going, whoa, that's a crazy amount. So it sort of throws him off. He says, all right, take your invoice. Take the invoice that I've written out. It's a grammatos. All right, take this written out invoice, all right, and rewrite it for how much? For 50. All right, he owed 100. Now he only owes 50. He just changed the invoice. Now, is the manager going to know this? No. You know why? Because he hired, the owner, the rich man. Is he going to know this? No, because the manager's the one doing this, all right? And so he's just going to change everything. Now, is this a win-win? Win? The rich man gets an amount. He doesn't know how much it is. He's rich. The guy owes him 1,000 gallons of olive oil. Do you think he's going, oh, where's the other 450 gallons of olive oil? All right. No, it's this extravagant amount. So this manager is going to get the favor. This guy who owes all the olive oil, he's going to get something. And the owner, the rich man, he's going to get something. All right? So it's sort of a win-win-win. All right? He goes to the second one. What happens? How much do you owe? 100 cores or measures of wheat. This is like 15 bushels. Okay? Can you picture 15 bushels of wheat? Again, exorbitant amount. They said it would take 10 to 15 years to gather this much wheat. All right? So he says, take your invoice again, write it out, make it 80. All right? Now, how's everybody doing? Was this smart? Was this wise? Was this prudent? All right? In verse 8, well, look what happens. The master does what? Excoriates the man, scourges him, beats him, throws him in prison. What does he do? What? This is why this parable is so confusing. Because everybody listening at this point is going, wait, that can't be right. Jesus must have said that wrong. Luke wrote it down wrong. The witness told the story wrong. Because no way he's going to praise him. He's just had all this money taken away from him. This guy who's been squandering all his money now goes behind his back, cuts in half all of these things. Why? What's his ambition? To make sure the master gets his stuff? No, what's his ambition? And this is the key to the sermon. What is his ambition? To be taken care of, to be provided for, to be welcomed in so he doesn't starve to death. All right? That's his ambition. Is that a realistic ambition? Yes. Starving to death is bad, okay? So his ambition is this. And what does he do? He uses this problem-solving thing to go dig, nope, beg, nope, discount. Aha. I'll use the discount. And so that when I discount everybody, these guys are going to go, you know what, I owed him 100 measures. I owed him 900 gallons of olive oil. I only had to pay him 450. I like this guy. So when he gets out of work in the next day, who might he just call upon? Who might he be able to go, hey, my master, he's just a horrible guy. He just fired me over some nothing thing. Do you mind if I come stay at your house? Absolutely. You just saved me 450 gallons of olive oil. You just saved me all these bushels of wheat. Of course you can stay at my house. Problem solved. Now, the manager's happy, but why is the rich guy praising him? Why is it saying, in verse 8, the master praised the unrighteous manager. Now, let's be real careful here. It's not saying that he was unrighteous in what he did with this problem solving, this renegotiating the contracts, all right? He was unrighteous before this, correct? Everybody with me? You gotta don't get ahead of this. He was unrighteous. Why? For doing what? Squandering the wealth. And he was going to be fired for his unrighteous act. At no point does it describe this whole renegotiating the contracts as being unrighteous. In fact, how does the manager treat it? The master praised the unrighteous manager, the one who acted unrighteously, because he acted unrighteously. What does your text say? Shrewdly. Anybody use that word this week? Anybody go, well, that was very shrewd of you. Now, the Holman translation uses what word? Astute. I know I haven't used that word all week except for reading this, all right? But online this week, I wrote something online, and a fraternity brother of mine just wrote back with one word comment, astute. I was like, holy cow, somebody actually used it the week I'm going to be preaching on this word. So what does this word mean? What is this? What is he commending him for? What is he praising him for? What has he done? This unrighteous manager did something his master praised him because he was astute, all right? It's a Greek word, phronimos. We get a word friend from this. It means to be mindful. It means to be thinking. It means to be clever, all right? It means to be sensible, okay? Several times it's used. The man who built his house on the sand versus the man who built his house on the what? The rock. How is the man who built his house on the rock described? Astute, shrewd, sensible, all the same thing. Jesus sends out his disciples. He sends them out, and he says to him, go out and be shrewd as serpents. Now, serpents are bad in the Bible, right? Especially the original serpent, all right? How did the serpent deal with Eve in the garden? Shrewdly. Why? Because he asked questions that she couldn't answer, and he knew he would trap her. He was tricking her. He was being clever with his words. And did he accomplish his goal? Yeah. All right? So we have this phraseology. The opposite of this word, phronimos, is moros. Guess which word we get from moros? Moron. Don't be a moron, okay? And Jesus is encouraging his disciples to not be morons. Be thinking. Be clever. Be as shrewd and astute as serpents, but yet be harmless as doves. That was his thing when he sent them out. This was his charge to them. All right? So he's encouraging this type of craftiness and cleverness. Okay? So the master praised the unrighteous manager because he had acted astutely. And then Jesus makes this assessment, because the sons of this age are more astute than the sons of light in dealing in their own generation or in their own people amongst themselves. Ashley and I discuss politics far too often. Far too often. And Ashley is very reactionary when she talks politics, all right? I have taught civics for a while. I taught AP government. I'm a political animal. I wrote my master's thesis on a church-state relations, the Supreme Court case and everything. So I've had a little time to be able to sort of process. Ashley is just like, that's wrong, boom, all right? She's going off, all right? And I try to explain to her how politics works sometimes. Now, if you remember George W. Bush, when he was in office, was he very crafty and clever in the way he dealt with politics? If you remember George W. Bush and his father as well, did they use a lot of gimmicks and tricks and using the press and all this stuff? No, I always remember George W. Bush's line was what? History will prove us right. Translation, I'm going to let them beat the snot out of me and not respond to anything they say. And how did that work out? George W. Bush left office with approval ratings in the 30s. Why? Because he didn't fight back. He didn't respond. Now, was that noble? Absolutely. Was that effective? No. Not if you're on his team. Because why? Because his team got the snot beat out of them in politics. Donald Trump comes along. He's a little more crafty and a little more fighty. All right? And he pushes back. He fights back in these situations. All right? And this is essentially what Jesus is saying. Don't go out there and just go, okay, they beat me up, I'll just get beat up. No, be a little crafty, a little clever, a little sensible. Think about this and try and do something different here. All right? Continue with the text. For the sons of this age are more astute than the sons of light in dealing with their own generation. There's a way to do this without being unrighteous, but have a little common sense. Don't be naive. Don't be a moron and just take the beating. There are ways to get around this. There are ways to process this. Verse 9, he even tells his disciples, go do what this man has done. Look at it in verse 9. And I tell you, and as you read this, compare this to what the manager has actually done. And I tell you, make friends for yourselves by means of the unrighteous money, so that when it fails, the money fails, and it will, they may dekomai, welcome you into eternal dwellings. Do you see what the man did? He got creative. He started thinking how to do this. To do what? And here's the real question. Why? Why did he get creative? What was he trying to accomplish? His ambition. To eat, to not die of starvation. That was his ambition, all right? And it was all self-centered. Everybody with me? And here's where I want to make the transition. That was his ambition. And the story falls on this, that his ambition was to take care of himself. And in this moment, he takes all of this dilemma and goes, where can I find the path to get me to my ambition? And again, at no point does it say what he did was unrighteous. At no point does it say what he did was wrong. In fact, the manager even, and I almost get to, the picture of me is, I see this rich guy sitting back in his office and go, dang, he got me. That was really clever. And I almost think the rich man's going, maybe I should keep him on. If he can be this clever when he's this desperate, maybe I'll just hold this over his head and keep him doing all these things, and just because if he's going to be this clever doing this, I might just keep him on. But again, he was doing all this, what? To further his ambition, his earthly ambition, his just carnal, in the flesh, in the moment, what will make me happy, what will help me to survive. Again, here's where I want to turn the conversation. What is your eternal ambitions? What are your eternal ambitions? This guy wanted to stay alive. What is your eternal? Remember, he's talking to his disciples months, weeks before he's going to die, and turn the keys over to them and go, now it's your turn. Now it's your turn. Now go and make disciples, teaching them, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. I'm turning this over to you. What are your ambitions, and how are you going to go about what you do? He's saying, you need to be astute. You need to be shrewd. You need to be crafty in this. Because if you don't, people will die and be separated from me forever. So really the question is, what are your ambitions? And what will you do to bring about those in a clever way? Because I think what Jesus is saying here is, far too often we in the church just kind of throw up our hands and go, well, I invited my friend to church and he didn't come, so, oh well. And I think Jesus is going, and you stopped? You stopped, because it's not going to affect you, and your ambitions are so self-centered and so small that you didn't get clever in this moment. You didn't go, oh, well, okay, I see this guy at work. I'm going to invite him to church. Hey, Bob, you want to come to church with me? No. Okay. And that's the end. Why? And here's the question you need to ask. Why is that the end for you? Well, I tried. No. Bob is going to spend eternity in hell separated from his loving Father. And you going to stop with one invite? You see, this guy was going to starve to death, and so what did he do? He goes to the first option, well, I'm just not strong enough to dig, so I guess I'll just die. What if he stops there? What does the master say about him? Fred just keeled over in the ditch one day, had no common sense. Fred knows he's not strong enough to dig, but he went and dug anyway, and now he's dead. No one's praising Fred in this moment. Everybody with me? But he's praised because he kept thinking, how can I do this? How can I do this? And Jesus is saying, go do what this guy did. Take your ambitions. You need to check your ambitions. What are your ambitions? What is your heart? What has this cross compelled to you to do in your world? And if it's just to show up at work, make a lot of money, and then die someday, you've missed the cross. You've missed what it should be compelling in you. But if it's compelling something, how creative are you getting? All right, Bob said no. Bob doesn't want to go to church. What can I do? Bob's married. He's got kids. We got some pretty cool stuff going on with our kids on Wednesday nights this summer. Wild and wacky and wet and something else, so who knows what'll happen. I'm going to sidetrack and go, hey, Bob, would you want your kids to come on a Wednesday night for something like this? No. All right, now do you quit? Now, is that the end of your problem solving? Well, I asked him directly, then I asked him about the kids, and he, no. Bob's married. Bob's wife's always wanted to go to church. I'll get my wife to call Bob's wife, and now Bob's wife will show up at church, and Bob is going to come in tow because he didn't have anything better to do. You see what we're doing here? Instead of just quitting, instead of just going, well, this didn't happen, oh well, that tells you about your ambitions, not the other person's. And Jesus is telling his disciples, it's not going to be easy. People are not going to line up and go, hey, will you invite me to church? Will you do that? Will you share the gospel with me? Will you teach me something? No, you're going to have to be crafty. You got to be clever. He closes this thing out in verse 13. I'll skip over a couple of things here, just for time. It says, no household slave can be the slave of two masters, for either he will hate one and love the other, or he will be devoted to one and despise the other. You cannot be slaves to both God and money. Now, he's telling that because next week we'll pick up on this sort of the hinge of this text right here. Next week we'll pick up on how the Pharisees are the ones who are the lovers of money, all right? But this is sort of the hinge in this. But he's pointing out this. Who is your master? You can only have one. You can only have one master in the direction you're going. You can live your life. You can live this temporal life, and you can sit here, and your ambition can be, how high up the office can I get? Can I get to the top floor of the office? Can I get the nice car? Can I get the nice house? Can my kids get into the best college? Can I retire with this many toys in my chest? Can I do all this? Or could your ambition be, how many people can I bring with me into the kingdom of God? And I know this. When you get into the kingdom of God, you are not going to care how high your office was, what kind of car you drove, what college your kids went to, or any of the things of this world, because they will grow strangely dim in the light of his glory and grace. And what you will care about is all the people that come along with you into the kingdom because you were astute, because you were crafty, because you were clever, because your ambition was to bring people to Christ. And you never, 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 never let no be the final answer. Because your ambition was for them to love them enough to keep bringing them to Christ, to keep sharing the message of Christ, to find a path, to find an avenue, to find a direction. I remember when we lived in Atlanta, our across the street neighbor, we used to go at it politics-wise. He would always put up his Obama signs and whoever was running the Democrats. And I'd never put up the Trump signs or anything like that. I was nice for that. But I would wait for him. I would hear his trash can rolling out. And I would hear it rolling out, and I'm like, jump up, run up, and grab my trash can and roll out just so I could sit in the driveway in the cul-de-sac and have a conversation with him. Because I wanted to have the opportunity. So was I clever in that? Yeah, a little bit. He wanted to do a coat drive one time. He's just a nice guy. Just wanted to do a coat drive. And I went to our church. I said, hey, my lost neighbor is doing a coat drive for the neighborhood. Let's fill up all of his coats. And he showed up at the clubhouse one day and had like 3 coats. And then we roll in right after church with like 35, 40 coats. And he's like, whoa. I'm like, this is me trying to get into your life. Because my ambition was what? I wanted Bobby to know Christ and to know how much he was loved. So am I going to get creative? Absolutely. Because I love him that much, because I know how much that proved Christ's love for me. And for me to be able to pass that on, that's just common sense. That's just beautiful grace. So again, what is your ambition? And how creative are you in fulfilling that? Because the creativity factor reveals the intensity of your ambition. All right, let's pray. Father, I thank you for this crazy story that you just kind of threw in here. I thank you that we can see beauty in it. It may seem very distracting and may be very difficult, but I thank you that you shocked people, that you surprised your disciples, that you didn't just give them the standard line and tell them go, but you spoke to them in their hearts and you challenged their minds and you challenged their thoughts. Father, may we understand this parable more. May we see it more. May we feel the desperation of this manager, but not just to eat and not just to have a roof over our heads, but may we feel the desperation of a lost and dying world all around us. And Father, give us beautiful, astute, shrewd, sensible thoughts so that we can bring more with us into the kingdom.